Hey, this is Josh Keaton, and you are listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
You've just jumped inside the pull bag. Join TFG1 Mike and the rest of the comic crew here at the GCRN as they make their great escape into comics. From DC, Marvel, and Image to IDW, Boom Studios, and Zenescope, we have everything right here. We cover things like Transformers, He-Man, superheroes, TMNT, and Radiant Black. Yeah, we have all that and so much more. It's all inside the pull bag here on the Geekcast Radio Network. So, without further ado, it's time to talk about the comics we're reading right now, here inside the pull bag.
My brain's not a nice place to be.
Hello and welcome to the pull bag. This is episode 545. I'm, of course, TFG1 Mike. And this time around, it is another Origins episode. And ladies and gentlemen, we are on the road to 600 episodes. We've got 55 to go, I think, something like that. And the thing is, folks, in March of 2024, it'll be our 11th anniversary on March 6th, which means I'm doing something really dumb. I'm going to do 5 episodes in 1 week, 1 episode a day. So this is where it starts, and I have with me the Irredeemable Shagg Matthews. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Shagg has his own podcast, which I'm sure we will talk about and all that good stuff. He is Once Upon a Geek.
Yeah, if you give me a platform, I'm going to promote myself. Make no doubt.
Absolutely. 100%. That's what we're all here for, right?
Absolutely.
But we are all comic book fans around here, and Shagg is going to answer the 30 questions all about his comic book history. So, did you grow up reading comics, and at what age did you first remember reading or noticing comics?
Well, I'll kind of answer it in stages. Like, earliest readings, I don't remember a time there weren't comics around, but they were just like stacks of funny books, like Harvey, kind of like Sad Sack and things like that. I'm a little older than you, I think, because I grew up in the 70s. So we had stacks of like, Richie Rich and Hot Stuff and all that. Sad Sack was the one that resonated with me the most. So I remember reading those. But I mean, it was just for fun. Like I read them and forgot about them, kind of thing in a pile. And I don't even think they were mine. I think I found them at my grandma's house or something. I don't know. Then the first time I really had comics I considered my own were gifts from either my family or my sister. My sister was very kind and would give me comic books. And there's like an old issue of Superman from very Bronze Age stuff. We're talking with Mitsoplik, and another one, a Fantastic Four issue. And then the one that really kind of resonated with me was Justice League of America 171, which was an Earth 2 crossover. And that was the first time I'd ever heard of this whole Earth 2 concept. And it kind of it was like, ooh, this is fascinating, parallel worlds and whatnot. But I didn't stick with it. Mm-hmm. The first time I ever really stuck with buying comics, when I was about 9 years old, I was in the convenience store, and it was 1980. So there you go, you get my age right there. Mm-hmm. And Star Wars from Marvel Comics issue number 50 was sitting there on the stands. And I had seen Empire Strikes Back 6 times in the theater, because that's what you do. And I knew Han Solo was in Carbonite, right? And then I look on the cover, and there's Han Solo hanging out with Luke, on the cover of Star Wars number 50, in this beautiful, beautiful painted cover by Tom Palmer. And I'm like, I have to own this. So I bought it, and I still to this day say that's a great freaking comic book. I mean, Star Wars number 50, if you've never read it, folks, go check it out. It's phenomenal. Anyway, and that got me buying comic books on a regular basis. I bought for about 3 years. I bought the Star Wars comic. The funny part was, though, I didn't think of myself as a comic collector. I thought of myself as a Star Wars collector. So then I kind of faded out of that after a few years. Then get to age 12, and this is where the ball gets rolling. You hear about kids that like comic books that get bullied, right, in school and all this stuff.
Right, yeah.
I was the opposite. I got bullied into reading comics. I started 6th grade, middle school, and I'm at like the lunch table, and all the kids are just going on talking about Ultron and Galactus and Magneto, and I'm like, what are you guys talking about? And I had no idea what they're. I mean, I had seen the Spider-Man cartoons and stuff, right? Yeah. But I didn't know who all these Marvel characters were. And they're like, you're not reading Secret Wars? I'm like, no. And so, like, I went home like shamed. I was embarrassed. So imagine like Charlie Brown, like, no, going home, and I went to the convenience store, and there was an issue of Secret Wars. So I picked it up, and I have been a comic collector ever since.
Mm-hmm. So as a kid, there wasn't you just found them on your own. There wasn't a specific parent or friend or anyone who said, here, kid, read this comic, go away, you bother me.
No, I literally got into it because of Star Wars and then because of peer pressure.
There you go.
Nerd bullies existed back then.
Yes, they did. When you were a kid, which characters were your favorites?
Well, I'm going to quantify kid because I'm really old. Like, I'm going to quantify kid in different levels here, okay?
You're not that old. You're not that much older than me.
Well, I'm also going to expand this because that gives me a platform to talk about all my favorite characters. So when I first started reading comics after Secret Wars, I fell in love with the X-Men. I was all in on the X-Men, and I stayed in with them for years, all the way into the 90s and stuff like that. But shortly after reading X-Men, I watched the Super Friends, and there was this brand new character on the Super Friends called Firestorm. So I watched the first episode with Firestorm, literally got on my bike and pedaled up to that same convenience store, and there were a couple issues of Firestorm sitting there on the stand, and that began a lifelong love for me with Firestorm. I ran a Firestorm blog for about 8 years. My claim to fame is I'm the Firestorm guy. Woo, look at that. Someone had to be the Firestorm fan. And then I quickly became fans of Aquaman. So I would say in my early days of collecting, the big fandoms were Firestorm, Aquaman, Blue Devil, huge Blue Devil fan. Loved that comic because I felt like I could get on a number one. You're going to like this. I was a big fan of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But only the Mirage Studio stuff. I started with when issue 5 was on the shelf. Got through issue 10 with that amazing fold out inside with Shredder and all that. But then once the cartoon started, I was one of those people that you hear stories about. They're like, oh, this isn't my Turtles anymore. And I stopped collecting. Like, I haven't read a Turtles comic since issue 10.
Okay, stop.
Uh-oh.
Stop right now.
I know you're going to preach the word
How much of a Turtles fan are you?
Okay, so, I mean, obviously, you can't say I was much if I only stuck with it for what? Well, 5 issues back or 6 issues back then was probably like 2 years. But I mean, I bought Fugitoid. I bought all the reprint stuff that I could up to that point. I had the I had the role playing game. I had the miniatures that you could buy for the role playing games. I mean, I was at that time I was really into it. Since then I've drifted apart from it, and I still appreciate. I know it's a huge fan of my son. I'd buy him the toys and everything, but it was never my game again.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, yes, you're right. I am going to preach at you, not to you, at you.
IDW, I know all 562 issues you've read and covered. I know.
No. Well, technically, it's currently only it's on the road to 150, and then it's going to stop. And anyway, the point is, right now, what you need to do is go back to whatever comic store or whatever online thing. You need to look at the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle IDW collection hardcovers. This is the only way I will recommend this to you if you get them, because the IDW collection hardcovers have everything in story order. I think there's something like 14 volumes, but if you start with volume 1 and keep going every once in a while, some of them may be hard to get now, but start with those. Look, the way my buddy Joe said to me, because I was not a Mirage fan. I was the opposite. I was the cartoon kid. I was not the comic kid. Joe was like, here, Turtles, let's go. I looked at it and I'm like, red bandanas, screw this. Hell no. He's like, no, dude, wait, it pays off. And I'm like, okay, I'll give it a shot. I gave it a shot. 10 fucking years later, look where we are. We've got 60 plus episodes covering that entire series.
You're not the first one to preach. My buddy Kyle Benning told me all about it as well. And it's been like 40 years since I've read a Turtles comic. If I bump on this, I will let you know. You'll be the first one. You and Kyle Benning, I'll let you guys know.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles IDW Collection Volume 1. Just start there with that first hardcover. Seriously, I'm telling you, it's the easiest way to collect it. It's the easiest way to read it because it's all in story order. So if it goes from issue 1 to 5, and then it might have the mini-sodes or the mini-series in it. But it's all together.
Okay, I'm not arguing with you about the best format to read it in, but you have to think about this. When you're talking to a geek, what's the surefire way to get them not to do something is to tell them they must do something.
Must do something.
Exactly. So
here, I'll throw it out like this. In the words of the great Ralphie, I triple dog dare you.
Okay, all right. Well, just hold tight. We'll get to something later that I know will spark your interest. You'll be happy with me. So I'll put it on my maybe list. How's that? I'm not denying that's the way to read it. I'm just saying I don't know if I want turtles in my life. So I'm going to continue to use this platform to talk about other favorite characters of mine. So I'll rattle them off real quick. Tim Drake, Robin. Yep. Absolutely was my Robin. Loved him as Robin. Wally West is Flash. My Flash. The whole run of Wally West's book was just amazing and phenomenal. Dr. Fate. I've always loved Dr. Fate. He's just got a cool look. He's got a few different good series under his belt. He's got a lot of bad series under his belt as well, but I love the character. Daredevil's another big favorite of mine, and Kyle Rayner, Green Lantern as well. So that kind of rounds out my absolute favorites. I got other ones too, and we'll work those in the conversation if I can later. But those are my top favorites.
Yeah, Kyle and John are superior in my mind.
Yeah,
Kyle Rayner, John Stewart.
Yeah.
Everybody else, no thank you.
I like Guy Gardner because...
Yeah, Guy's all right.
Not because he's a good person or I'd want to hang out with him, but he is interesting to read about in stories.
Yes, absolutely. All right, the age-old question, DC or Marvel?
I have room in my heart for both, but I'm primarily a DC guy. That's just where I fell in love. I don't turn my nose up at Marvel. It was actually where I started. It was my starting. It was like X-Men and Secret Wars, really. I moved from Secret Wars and what I consider sort of graduated to Crisis on Infinite Earths is what happened. I made the jump, dove in deep on Crisis without knowing who any of these characters were, other than like the Super Friends. So I would sit there and like make out lists. I'd write out lists of characters. Like, so here's Blue Beetle. He is from Earth Charlton. What the hell is that? Okay. And then here's this character. And I would literally have lists of characters on what Earth they were from, just trying to figure it all out. And I guess maybe that was part of the fun for me, was the fact that I had to figure it out.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, man, for me, and I say this, I've been saying this for 11 years, and every one of these episodes we do, I don't have loyalty to either. It's the characters. Like DC, Batman Beyond has been in my blood for 25 years. It will never not be a part of me.
Right.
Terry McGinnis, Blight, Inc., all that stuff, everything else. All of that. With Marvel, certain parts of Peter Parker Spider-Man, but where I really got into it was I wanted something different because at that time, back in 2014, it was, 20 years since the animated series? Oh, God, it's 30 years. November is 30. Fuck. Oh, boy, I'm old. You're older, but I'm old.
Right.
But, so I didn't really want anything like... I was tired of Peter. Like, I love Peter. He's a great character, but there's only so many times you can go back and get new #1 money by saying a radioactive spider bit this dude. But then they went superior and put Ock. I was like, oh, what's this? Hell yes. Give me Doc Ock as Spider-Man. That's amazing to me.
I'm kind of similar in that way. Like Daredevil's in my blood and has been now for, oh my gosh, since 1989, whatever the math is on that, 35 years? He's been in my blood. And I'll read Daredevil forever. But other characters, I drop in when it's convenient. Like Spider-Man, I've had big runs I've read of his. I like to just drop in and read the giant crossovers, the ones that people usually complain about. They're like, Spider Island, this is stupid. And I'm over there eating popcorn and drinking soda going, this is fun. It's like a blockbuster movie. And, can I tell you the plot of it now? No recollection whatsoever. I literally remember nothing about it, but I had fun reading it.
Yeah,
but like other characters that I love with Marvel, though, I mean, like Spider-Man 2099, phenomenal character. Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider, I love him. The Alpha Flight. Alpha Flight's totally in my blood. I'll always be willing to read Alpha Flight. Or Avengers, specifically, I'll stand up for the Bendis run. A lot of people won't. I loved the Bendis run. There's a lot to not like about it, but it was fun for me. I really enjoyed it. Mark Waid's Champions, the Young Avengers. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff in Marvel. Even though I say I'm a DC guy, I still have read a ton of Marvel. I subscribe to both DC Infinite and Marvel Unlimited. So
right, yeah, absolutely. What other publishers do you enjoy reading?
Well, it's primarily Marvel and DC. Right. I don't typically dip into the other stuff. If you want, I can talk about other publishers, more recent comic books that I've read.
That's fine.
All right. Well, this might this is where you're going to get all excited. Just recently, in the last probably 2-3 months, I read a crap ton of Radiant Black.
There you go.
Yeah, I knew you'd get excited.
Right.
I read the first 4 volumes of the collections.
Yep.
Then I read Rogue Sun and Radiant Red and Dead Lucky and Radiant Pink and Shift, and I read some of the Cowl stuff. Yeah, it's a heck of a lot. I didn't expect much out of it, but it was a heck of a lot of fun.
Kyle Higgins, man, let me tell you, like, I got a chance to interview him back when he was still doing Nightwing.
Cool.
And yeah, and that dude is awesome. And that's the other thing for me, and we'll get into this once we get into some of the other questions, but I follow characters and I follow creators.
Sure.
Whatever they're going to do, like, I'm on board. He did Cowl. Holy crap. He did Radiant Black. He did Power Rangers. He did all this stuff, and it's like, holy crap. Yeah, my buddy Joe and I, who does the Turtles comics with me, we started doing Radiant Black. I think we got up to Volume 3. I think we still need to do Volume 4 and some of the other stuff. I have not got into Rogue Sun yet. I need to get into that. So
it's like I only read the first volume. I guess there's 2 volumes, and I'm reading collections, and I'm doing it on Hoopla.
Yep.
And so far, the first volume doesn't really connect with the Radiant universe. Like I'm guessing that obviously they must be in the same parallel, universe, but they're not directly connected. Like Radiant Red and Dead Lucky, those are obviously really connected. Rogue Sun's kind of a whole other thing. So it's one you don't have to get to, but I guess it eventually connects. But anyway, it's been a fun run. And the first time I noticed Kyle Higgins was I think it was Deathstroke. Didn't he do a run on Deathstroke during maybe Rebirth? Or something?
Maybe. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Where I remember him kind of starting out was where I found him was Gates of Gotham and then Nightwing, New 52 Nightwing.
Okay. If only there was some device that could tell us the world.
Internet. That's right.
Yes, he absolutely did Deathstroke. And I read those, and that was the first time I noticed him as a writer, and I was like, ooh, I really like this. Yeah. So, yeah, I like that guy. He's good. Yep. So, and then as far as other publishers, I mean, it's more like I'm following a creator. Like Jeff Parker, anything he writes, any publisher, I don't care. I'm there. I'll buy stuff like that.
Absolutely. Print or digital? Which one? Both, either or, and why or why not?
I was obviously we all were print people forever. I'm absolutely a digital person now. I would prefer to never have to touch another physical comic again. I've gotten that bad. I subscribe to DC Infinite. And I do like the high ultra tier level. I subscribe to Marvel Unlimited. I have bought a bunch of crap on Comixology. I have not bought a single thing on Comixology since it got all screwy a couple years ago. I still own all the stuff I bought there, but I just won't.
It's gotten better, but it's not
a lot.
It's not what it used to be. It's basically like if you want to read it on a screen, like if you want to read it on a tablet or a smartphone, it's very similar to what it used to be. But the whole process of the fact that you can't buy stuff on the app, you have to buy it on Amazon's website on a computer. That's a nightmare.
There's a way around it, by the way. If you have an iPhone.
I don't.
Okay, well, either way, whatever device well, at least I know this works on the iPhone. Rather than using the app to purchase, you just use a browser. And you can buy through the browser. Yeah. So you can go to Amazon's website on your phone. So you don't at least have to go sit at a computer. But either way, it's not what it used to be. I still own all the stuff, and I'll still read the stuff I bought on there. But then my other thing I fall in love with is Hoopla. That's where actually I read all the Radiant Black stuff. Was on Hoopla. It was all out there. And I'm reading Firefly out there right now. And it's great, fantastic way. If you have a public library, folks, and if you have a library card, and if you don't, shame on you, more than likely your library is partnered with a company called Hoopla, and you can just check out books from the library on your tablet and read them. And tons of comic books. It's fantastic.
So you don't actually pay anything for this?
No, it's all legal. It's through your library. It's a service. Right. I'm assuming the publishers the libraries have to pay for books when they buy them. So I'm assuming they have some sort of digital relationship when someone borrows a digital item, I would assume. So, it's not anything shady. It's completely above board.
No. I know it is, and I've heard of Hoopla. I have never looked into it.
And I am all about being cheap. So free is really good to me.
That's right.
Yeah, but if I like something, I'll buy. Like I did buy the first Radiant trade paperback. I did buy the first Firefly trade paperback. It's just from there, I'm like, all right, I buy it as like a taster, and then I'm like, all right, I'm just going to read it digitally then.
Yep.
The last thing I need in my house is more freaking paper. So I don't know if this is another one of the questions or not. As far as paper goes, I have 49 long boxes, completely full.
That's it? 49?
The reality is it's more than that. But my wife said, how many boxes do you have? I said 49. She says, if you ever get to 50, they all go to the street. So I will forever say I have 49 boxes. So
don't say anything. Don't let your wife hear this.
So I have 49 long boxes, folks. Completely stuffed.
149 long boxes. There we go. Oh, boy. Who are some of your favorite comics writers and why?
Okay. Now, this may be a little long, but I don't care.
Okay.
One of my all-time favorite writers is Jerry Conway. Jerry Conway created so many characters we all love. He created Firestorm. He created the Punisher. He created Power Girl. He created tons and tons of characters that you may not even realize he created. He's a great Bronze Age writer. Put together, he killed Gwen Stacy. I mean, he did a bunch of stuff. And because I ran and because Firestorm was one of his big creations, and I ran that website again for, I guess 2009 to 2016. So what's that? 7 years? I ran that site, every day for 7 years. He was kind enough to do a bunch of interviews with me. So I've interviewed Jerry like 7 times. And
wow,
he's an incredibly kind man. He's generous with his time. He's funny. He's interesting. Really great guy. So Jerry is way high at the top of my list. I mean, he wrote so many Silver Age or Bronze Age Justice League stories that are just phenomenal that I absolutely love Jerry Conway. Cool. Then as far as getting away from more a personal relationship, just stuff that I enjoy reading, Mark Waid is almost always a great read. Not 100%, but he bats a really high average of some really great comic books. I love Mark Waid's stuff, whether it be the Flash run is where I first really took notice of him, or, with the stuff he's doing nowadays with World's Finest or Kingdom Come. I mean, he's done a bunch of great stuff. Peter David, another fun writer. I really enjoyed his run on the Hulk. I enjoyed his X Factor. I enjoy his Star Trek books, actually, which isn't comics, I realize. But really, just if you want a good laugh, and he's a fantastic superhero writer for that. Really enjoy it. The guy I'm probably the biggest fanboy for right now is Jeff Parker. I will read anything Jeff Parker writes. He did a phenomenal run on Aquaman. He did a great Agents of Atlas stuff. He's done a bunch of independent stuff. He just released a Blighter thing via Kickstarter that I supported. Really a fantastic writer and a really nice guy, too. And he's in Portland, and a lot of his stuff will be themed over there or whatever. And it's just, if you're looking for fun superhero comics that really hit our kind of age demographic, anything by Jeff Parker is a huge win.
Isn't he the guy that did Bone?
That's Jeff Smith.
Jeff Smith, okay.
Yep. Different guy. Hang on, I'm going to turn around and look at my bookcase here real quick. Agents of Atlas, The Interman, Meteor Man. Guys, he's done a ton of stuff. He's also done a bunch of mainstream stuff, too. Again, he did a big run in Aquaman that was huge right after Jeff Johns wrote his. Jeff Johns, there you go. There's a great writer. Now, the thing about Jeff Johns is up till 2005, I would say everything he wrote was genius. After 2005, it's just a matter of whether he's using his powers for good or for evil at that point. I like a lot of his writing. Some of it I don't. So
there you go.
Then J.M. DeMatteis and Keith Giffen together as a pair. And this is where I start pimping. One of the things I do is a podcast called the Justice League International HAHAHAHA podcast. This is where we cover the JLI, Justice League International books that were published from 1987 to 1992. It's that jokey era with, Blue Beetle and Booster Gold and Fire and Ice and all them. Mm-hmm. And those were written by Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis, and they're freaking hilarious. They are some of the funniest comics written. They're very emotional. They get to you. They pull on the heartstrings all the way around. And every time those two wrote something together, it was amazing. We just lost Keith Giffen recently, which is incredibly sad. But those two, everything they wrote was pure gold.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then as far as modern writers go, like Tom Taylor, I don't know if you've been reading any of his stuff from DC. Holy crap, he's good.
So I have a plan. And the listeners, I'm sorry. I know I keep saying I have this plan.
Is this your 90 days of Nightwing?
I've had this plan stuck.
Yeah, I listened to an episode today that's like 3 years old where you were talking about it.
It's been 3 years. Oh, wow. Yeah, I've had this plan for a long time. And now I'm finally getting it into fruition because starting with episode 600 will be the announcement. Episode 601 to 698 or 99 or 90, something like that. Whatever. Will be 90 Nights of Nightwing. The problem I'm having is listing it in trade. I only have episode 601 to like 656 because I'm only looking for specifically Nightwing trades. I know I can look for the Teen Titans stuff. I know I can include Gates of Gotham. We did Gates of Gotham years ago, so a refresh wouldn't be bad.
So are you going to do a trade a day or a comic a day?
Yeah, trades.
Oh, okay.
Collected editions. Yeah, episode a day, podcast a day, but it's all collected editions, and that's the problem.
Well, you could dig into like the Batman animated series collected editions because Nightwing's in those.
That's true.
And then there's the stuff they've done more recently. Last couple of years, like Batman Continues. I don't know. It was a digital first.
Oh, yeah.
It was really good. It was really well done. So there's options, but yeah, Nightwing's great, and the Tom Taylor stuff. Holy moly! So
I need to read that. I have not read that yet.
I didn't care. Like I have a buddy named Paul Hicks who over in the Waiting for Doom network, and he kept pushing me to read this Tom Taylor stuff, and I'm like, Paul, I don't care about new stuff. I don't care. And he taught me into trying the Nightwing. Holy crap! It is so good. Tom Taylor he's kind of like Jeff Johns was before 2005. Everything Tom Taylor writes is gold right now. It's just great. Yeah. So, and then Kurt Busiek, Chuck Dixon, Chris Claremont, Ann Nesenti, Greg Rucka. I mean, lots of writers. Yeah, and here's a writer that surprised me today. Like, I was trying to think of writers that I like. Brian K. Vaughan ended up on my list, and I didn't think I liked him. Like, I don't remember ever seeking him out. But then I looked at my bookshelf of trades, and I'm like, oh, I sure own a lot of copies of Runaways, and I sure own a lot of trades of Why the Last Man, and I sure own a lot of trades of Paper Girls. I guess I like Brian K. Vaughan. I never knew that.
There you go. Very cool. Very cool. Is that it?
Yeah, I'll shut up there. I got more, but I'll stop.
All right. What defines a good story to you?
What defines a good story? So I would say in those cases, you have to make me care about the character, right? Like, I have to know who they are, rather than just being generic superhero number 3, or whatever. Right. I have to care about the characters. So, like, when I close the comic book, I have to know something about them. And an emotional journey would be nice, but that's not going to happen every issue, and that's okay. You know what? Radiant Black. I'll use some common ground there. Like, I finished issue number 1. Now, see, I can't even remember the characters' names, but I remember Nathan. Okay, well, wait, is that the first guy or the second guy?
Nathan and Marshall. Nathan is the one that had to come back from L.A. to Chicago, and Marshall is the savvy business person.
You could call it that. So Nathan,
he'd like to think so.
Yeah, he likes to think so. So Nathan, like, by the end of issue 1, I knew him. I got him, right? Yep. Like, I understood that he was, a washed out writer that couldn't get him back on that horse, and I knew who he was. I knew he was in debt. I understood that guy. And when I got done with that comic, no offense to the superheroics, like superpowers, awesome. I love it. But, your powers are less important to me. Who you are is more important to me. And I knew Nathan by the end of issue number 1, and I was hooked. And that is a way to tell a great story, is make sure you care about the characters, and that one works.
Yeah, absolutely. What does a story have to draw you in? So you go into the comic shop, you grab a new number 1 of whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Whatever thing you like. What does that number 1 issue have to make you go back to get the second issue?
I think we just covered it. You got to care. You got to care about the characters. Yeah. I got to care about the powers are cool, and that's a part of the fun thing with the superheroics. But I got to care about who the hero is, or I should say the protagonist. They don't have to be a hero, but I have to care about the protagonist. Yeah,
absolutely. Who are some of your favorite comics artists?
Oh, okay. Big list again, but I'll go through quickly. Like Walt Simonson, anything that man draws is astonishing, right? I've loved so much of his work, whether it be over on DC stuff or Marvel stuff, whatever. The guy's just genius. George Perez, astonishing artist. Crisis is where I cut my teeth in DC. Reading his Justice Leagues as well. I met him several times. An incredibly nice man. I mean, what a loss to have lost him. Yeah. But I mean, just the gold standard. For the 80s and 90s, I think. I think he set the tone for what comics were going to be for the next 20 years. Adam Hughes. I like Adam Hughes drawing superhero comics more than I like him just doing pinups of hot girls. Pinups of hot girls are great, but I like it when he's drawing a superhero book. He drew the Justice League International book for quite a while, and it was phenomenal under his pencil. Right. Tom Grummett, he is a very underrated artist. He drew a lot of stuff for DC in the 90s. I always think of him as kind of like a 1990s version of John Byrne, in that he could draw anybody and they looked great. And when you saw his style, you always knew who the artist was. You're like, oh, you never mistake Tom Grant for somebody else, but it looks great. He did, very famously did a bunch of Superman stuff, did a bunch of stuff over at DC with Superboy and Robin as well. Over at Marvel, he did that X-Men book. What was the one where Chris Claremont came back, but they just told almost like a what if story. I'm going to turn around again.
Okay.
X-Men Forever, I think is what it was called. Yeah. I got a bunch of trades of that. Great stuff. Anyway, he's a fantastic artist. Underrated. Mike Parobeck, another fantastic underrated artist, drew a bunch of stuff in the Impact line. He drew a fantastic 10-issue Justice Society America series. He drew Batman Adventure stuff, the animated series, comic book. He had this style that was so clean and so simple and cartoony without being kiddie. It was like Bruce Timm, draws. Mm-hmm. It's cartoony, but it's not kiddie, if you understand what I mean. Yep. And Mike Parobeck was incredible. He died so young. It's such a loss. He was going to be amazing. He was going to be one of the artists we were talking about forever. Mm-hmm. Then Todd Knock. I don't know if you've ever read any of his stuff.
I don't think so.
Oh, he's so good. He drew all of Young Justice. He drew over at Image, did Wild Guard. I don't know if you ever read Wild Guard. He's doing Stargirl stuff more recently. He loves to throw in a ton of detail. Everything looks, again, cartoony, but it doesn't look simple. It's very complicated and detailed. Anyway, just great art. Todd Knock, look him up. David Mazzucchelli, the complete opposite. Absolutely minimal amount of lines. He did Batman Year One, right? Mm-hmm. He did Daredevil Born Again. Yep. So just incredible artist. Really knows how to use the minimal amount of lines and make it so expressive. John Byrne, anything in the 70s and 80s, looks golden. Start going into the 90s, maybe not so much, but, for my taste. Yeah. Paris Cullins is another great artist. He was kind of a house artist at DC, did Blue Beetle and Blue Devil, and did a whole bunch of Who's Who's. He's phenomenal. He's a nice guy also. Mark Bagley. Love Mark Bagley, either on Spider-Man or Thunderbolts or any number of books. He's fantastic. Then I'm going to rattle off a million other guys real quick that I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. But Kevin Maguire, amazing. Alex Ross, unbelievable. Changed comic books forever. Dale Eaglesham, our more recent artist who can just draw everything awesome. Sean McManus is great. Joe Quesada doesn't get enough credit as an artist. Brian Bolland, Dave Gibbons, John Romita Jr., Pat Broderick, Darryl Banks, Jerry Ordway. And then some Steve Rude is phenomenal, and Alex Toth, who's another master of the old days of minimal amount of lines, and just does amazing work.
Yeah, you say Joe Quesada. All as I can think of is that bar scene in Daredevil.
Well, I mean, hey, the guy could draw. I mean, he could really draw.
I know.
Yeah, so.
Do you have a favorite non-superhero title?
Yeah, I can recommend a few. Let's see. You ever heard of Unwritten?
I've heard of it. I don't think I've read it, though.
It was a DC Vertigo book. It was a story about stories and how telling a story can affect the world. And it was really trippy and interesting and made you think. And it was just damn good. Really, really good. You can get that in trades. It's great.
Kind of sounds like issue 3 of Radiant Black, where he did Writing Day.
I mean, there's kind of, sort of, but this is more like the telling of the stories changes reality kind of stuff.
Right,
I mean,
right.
Yeah.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, like, the whole writing about writing thing.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I can see what you mean. Yeah. A couple other recommendations to name as well. Scud the Disposable Assassin came out in the 90s. It's a hilarious just off-the-wall independent book about a robot assassin. It's just bonkers. Nexus by Steve Rude, Mike Barron. Fantastic sci-fi comic. Just gorgeously illustrated. I've been reading Serenity and Firefly by first Dark Horse and then Boom Studios, which is all tied into the Firefly TV show. And then I would also recommend Doctor Who. It's not a superhero comic. Anything with Matt Smith. If you've ever been a Doctor Who fan, Matt Smith is basically just a human cartoon anyway. And so he works really well. His story, I mean, there's a lot of Doctor Who comics out there, but Matt Smith specifically worked really, really well in comic book form.
Very cool, very cool. All right. What is your favorite run or story arc of a comic series?
That is an impossible question to answer. Why don't you throw a couple characters at me, and I'll tell you a good story. Let's try that.
God. All right. How about Bruce Wayne Batman, Tim Drake Robin, and Terry McGinnis Batman Beyond?
not all
You
of them.
asked.
No, I mean, not all of them, but I will say Batman and the Batman family, No Man's Land. You can't do better than No Man's Land. It was this huge arc of, I mean, went a whole year. It was dense. You could really get into it. I loved No Man's Land. It was great. Also, if you want more Batman, year one is phenomenal. Dark Knight Returns is great. Personally, I like year 3, which is where they introduced Tim Drake, which is a great one. So there you go. There's some Bat family stuff for you.
Wait, Batman year 3?
Yeah. I said year 3. Year 3.
When did that happen?
About 1989. It was it led into Lonely Place of Dying, where Tim Drake becomes Robin.
Okay, I'm gonna have to. I don't think. Wow. All right. Well then.
Usually they package year 3 and Lonely Place of Dying together because they were kind of thematically together because it was like Tim gets introduced in year 3, kind of, sort of, almost. Then Lonely Place of Dying really comes in. Perez did all the covers. They even released a portfolio of Perez's covers. It was so nice. It was great.
Wow.
Yep.
That's awesome.
That was during my Batman phase.
Absolutely. What is one comic you can read over and over again, single issue or trade?
That's a tough one. Squadron Supreme, the collection Squadron Supreme by Mark Gruenwald from the 80s, is such a phenomenal tale of Squadron Supreme are alternate versions of the Justice League. And in this story, they decide to try and fix all the world's problems. And they take control of the world. They're trying to do it for the right reasons, but they become controlling. They become, a terrible controlling government. It's a little bit like Kingdom Come. I mean, if you compare Squadron Supreme and Kingdom Come, there's a whole lot of parallels. So I'd say that, or Crisis on Infinite Earths, because I kind of cut my teeth there, or Secret Wars, because I cut my teeth there.
Very cool. Very cool. Are there comics you avoid altogether? So you go into the comic shop or you look on Amazon and you see this, like you see Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and Booster Gold. And obviously everybody's going to avoid Booster Gold because...
Hey, now.
But that's the point. Are there comics that you will just not read at all?
I don't tend to read Deadpool comics. I just... The over... explosion of him just left a bad taste in my mouth. I mean, the movies are funny. I mean, they are, but I'm just not a huge fan of that. But for me, it's less about characters. It's more about when I find out certain creators or publishers are really, and I'm going to use the words the kids use today, like gatekeepers or people that are, really pushing the toxic masculinity kind of vibe out there. I don't roll that way. Sorry, just not my thing.
Absolutely. Are there any comics in the past or currently that you wish you had not read them? Basically, oh my God, why did I waste my time on this?
So one thing I didn't get to mention is that I managed a comic book store from 1991 to 1996.
Why are you burying the lead, dude?
I managed a comic book store from 1991 to 1996. So I was there. I was literally there for the death of Superman, working it with the line out the door around the building. I was there with the launch of Image. So to answer your question, I worked in a comic shop from 1981 to 96. I read a lot of comics I wish I hadn't read because there was some great comics and there was some terrible comics. I mean, I was literally there for the boom and the bust, and some of the worst comics ever published were in that area, and some of the really great comics are from that era too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. How large or small is your physical comic book collection?
49 long boxes. We've already addressed this.
449 long boxes. Got it. All right. What is the one comic you could never live without ever? So everybody is safe, the wife, the kids, the pets, whatever, but the house is on fire. What is the one comic you're going to run in and save?
Oh, jeez. Can I just say my tablet so I can read all of them digitally forever?
I guess nobody's ever said that before, but sure, why not?
Because again, like the physical stuff, if I could get rid of these 49 long boxes, I would. I don't want to be burdened with them anymore. I would keep stuff. Yeah, that takes time. I'm busy making podcasts.
Okay, all right. Okay, so it's all right. So you're busy making podcasts, so am I. If you don't want to do eBay, there's this new thing called Whatnot. Everybody sells on Whatnot. It's a live auction thing. They do the bidding, blah, blah, blah. It's instant. It's so easy to sell on there.
Yeah, but then I got to figure out what it's worth and condition. And I'm like, I'd rather either do podcasts or spend time with my wife and children. I don't want to sit there and be like, who wants to bid on Robotech number 42 or, whatever, Robotics number 3,
Yeah.
Mad Balls.
Mad Balls. Oh my God.
That was a thing. It was. I've got some comics.
I know it was a thing. What was the most money you spent on a comic or comic item? Comic item could be statue, art print, etc.
Okay. Comic I was ready for. I probably haven't spent more than like $30 on a comic because I'm like, I just won't do it. I look at it, I'm like, I can't bring myself to spend a lot of money on a comic. I just won't do it. Comic related item, that gets a little ugly. As far as action figures go, I did. So I put together a collection of Justice League International action figures because I wanted to have that collection. And unfortunately, I did it in 2005. So I did it. I think that was when I did it. Either way, Blue Beetle had just been killed. And so the Ted Cord DC Direct, and I may have my years wrong, people, and I don't need to hear that from you people. Anyway, the DC Direct Ted Cord figure had gone through the roof in value because Ted was dead. And so I paid $50 for a effing Blue Beetle action figure that I immediately took out of the package. So I regret doing that, but it's a really nice figure, and it's still on my display case next to my desk. So, at least it's gotten some life out of it. Then I bought a few statues here and there. I mean, I bought a ton of the mini busts. Like, if I were to add up everything I spent to get, I have the whole Alpha Flight mini bust collection. Wow. All of those together, probably a few $100s, but individually, I didn't spend more than like $50 to $80 each. And then, so that's that kind of range. I'm not the kind of guy that's going to go spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on something.
There you go. Was there ever a moment when you were completely done with comics? That's it. Sell it all. Walk away.
No, not really. I mean, the closest would be in the 80s. I had been reading X-Men. I've been reading, Firestorm and stuff like that. And I gave it up for an incredibly short window of time. And I remember I had quit and I went over to a buddy's house. I mean, I've got to be this is probably only 4 or 5 years into collecting. And I had gone cold turkey and it was really hard. I mean, it was difficult. I felt like I was going through withdrawal. And I went to his house, and he was reading Fall of the Mutants from the X-Men, which was like a big deal at that point. And there was a great issue where the X-Men at least the world thinks they die. It's a really powerful conclusion. And my buddy's like, you have to read this. And at that moment, I knew I shouldn't do this. I'm like, no, this is like crack. I need to not do this. And, I got out and they pulled me back in thing. And I let him pull me back in. And so that was the only time I've ever given up comics completely. I have given up new comics several times where I've just said, I'm done reading new comics. I don't care about what they're publishing today. But I still read comics. I'll still read all my old comics or again, with the DC Infinite app, there's 27,000 DC comics I've never read. So I don't care if they were published in 1982. I didn't read it. It's new to me.
Absolutely. What are you reading right now, and what do you think our listeners should check out?
If we're talking about stuff being currently published, the Nightwing stuff by Tom Taylor, although I'm several issues behind. That's the beauty of the app, as I can read what I want, walk away, and come back later. The Nightwing book is by Tom Taylor is amazing. I really, really enjoyed the Flash run, not the current one that's only been on for a couple months. Right before that, the Jeremy Adams stuff, where they brought Wally back. Those were great. If you're looking on your app, it's the 2016 series, about halfway through or so. Jeremy Adams takes over. The Radiant Black stuff, I'd recommend that to people. It's a lot of fun. Stargirl, The Lost Children was a lot of fun recently. It was a miniseries, which then led into the Jay Garrick, The Flash miniseries going on right now, which is really fun. Alan Scott, Green Lantern is another miniseries on the shelves right now. It's really good. Another trade I read, now this is probably 5 years old, so I don't know if this really counts, but I read the first trade for Department of Truth, and that blew my mind. It really reminded me, and this came from a recommendation from my buddy Dr. Anch, it reminded me of reading Peter Milligan's Shay the Changing Man book, which was phenomenal in the 90s. I mean, it's like reading that. And after I got done reading that first Department of Truth trade, I mean, I probably thought about it for like 4 or 5 days. It just stayed in my brain. And that says a lot. Comics don't do that to me nowadays. So that was really resonated. Awesome. And then there's millions of old stuff, people. Go read Blue Devil. Go read Justice League International. Go read Firestorm. There's a million great comics out there you should be reading.
Absolutely. My problem, and listeners, you people have heard this already a million times in the last 11 years. My problem with old comics is I'm so used to new comics and all the colors and all the stuff and all the everything right in my face. And I look at old comics and I'm like, there's barely any color in here. There's barely, like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just jaded that way, but
That's a you problem. Yeah.
yeah, I know it's a me problem. Thank you. I understand. I get it.
I would say, I'm of the school where I think nowadays comics are overcolored. You know, with the over lens flaring and the over computer generated transitions and stuff like that. There's a lot to be said. Like, it's interesting in the Just League International book, again, because I do a podcast on that, JLI HAHAHAHA podcast. The colorist, it's very interesting. They had gradients and stuff that available to them back then, but they purposely chose to do the comic in flats. So everything was in flats. There were no gradients. There were no lens flares. And it's interesting. It really gives the comic a different texture, and it makes you read it differently. And that wasn't just, oh, back in the old days, they sucked. It was a conscious decision on their part to do that, and it made for a really interesting reading experience. I would even say some of the Batman animated series comics are kind of similar. Most of their stuff doesn't have a lot of, other than maybe grays and shadows, but most of that's in flats as well, and it makes for a completely different reading experience.
Absolutely. Heroes, heroines, anti-heroes, and heroines or villains. What character archetypes are your go-to reads?
True Blue heroes. That's just where I go. I don't know why. It's just where I don't get into the anti-hero stuff very often. There's occasional ones where I do. Villains, I mean, maybe it's a compelling story and I enjoy it for, the run, but for the most part, it's heroes.
Very cool, very cool. Do you have a my parents got rid of my comic story?
Not a bit. My mom's always, my dad was out of the picture by the time I was reading comics. I mean, still in my life, so he wasn't in the house.
Right.
And parents got divorced because, it was the 80s.
Yeah.
And then, but my mom was always super encouraging. I mean, I remember when I was, 85? So what's that? 13 years old. I had gotten a bunch of money for my birthday. She took me to the comic shop and she's like, go crazy. And I bought like the DC Heroes role-playing game, and I bought some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I'm just, she was completely supportive of me, and I appreciated that.
Absolutely. That is awesome. What is one item from a comic book you'd love to have in the real world?
Meaning like a Green Lantern ring or something like that?
Yeah, essentially, yes.
Yeah, probably Green Lantern ring. Because, even though I'm not like the biggest Green Lantern fan, it's pretty much wish fulfillment. You can get anything you want. So yeah, I'll go with that.
There you go. All right, folks, we are now entering the comic book fantasy funland. If you could own any vehicle featured in a comic, which would it be?
Blue Beetle's Bug.
Okay. If you could live in any comic book world that you wanted, where would you live?
Opal City. That's from Starman, DC Comics.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I was going to say, wait a second. I've never heard of that.
It's James Robinson. Then a recommendation. There we go. That's a book you guys should read. James Robinson, Starman. Holy crap. It takes superhero comics and turns it on its head. Not in a like, wow, this is wild, but it's just a guy who doesn't want to be a superhero, but it's a family tradition. So he's like, all right, I'll do it, but I'm doing it my way. And he's like, he loves going in. He collects antiques and junk stuff, and he likes cool vinyl records back before it was cool. He's a hipster basically. And but in a good way. And it's a great series. It went 80 issues, one writer the whole way through, really kept to his vision, and just a hell of a comic. And it gets deep. It's just really deep. Great stuff. So yeah, Opal City.
Very cool, very cool. Who would be your top 3 comic pals to join you and become a barbershop quartet?
Oh my gosh. I'll go simple since I'm a JLI guy. Blue Beetle, Booster Gold, and Mr. Miracle. There'd be a lot of laughing.
Interesting.
I don't think we get through one song.
Oh boy. Now, I want to remind everyone, we're in the comic book fantasy funland, so the fact that he's married and has kids does not matter at this moment. If you could date any comics character, which one would it be?
I want to say Barbara Gordon is my answer because she's awesome and brainy and smart and sexy, but the real answer would probably be Jean Grey. And I know she's a hot mess, and I don't care. I've always had a crush. I've always had a crush on Reds. I mean, and I think comics played a role in that. I mean, come on, Firestar to Jean Grey to Barbara Gordon, and then my wife who had red hair when we got married. So there we go.
Yeah, it's funny because I forgot that Jennifer Hale voices Jean Grey in X-Men '92. Editor Mike here. Jennifer Hale did voice Jean Grey, but it was not in X-Men '92. It was Wolverine and the X-Men. Sorry, I got it wrong. Even still, even though at this moment I think it's Catherine Dishel or something that did her in X-Men 92. Love the voices all around. Now back to the show. I forgot about that because I haven't really paid attention. Like, I've watched X-Men 92. We've covered it over on Tooncast a number of years ago and stuff, but I had completely forgot that Jennifer Hale had voiced her, because my biggest thing is Jennifer Hale, Black Cat in Spider-Man. Oh, I'm ready.
By the way, just to be that pedantic nerd, it's not X-Men 92. It's just X-Men, by the way.
No, it's X-Men the animated series.
There
I know,
go.
but the thing is, sometimes when you say to somebody who isn't us,
I know.
X-Men the animated series, they're not going to know 92. And now that they have X-Men 97, it's kind of a thing.
Well, and now
I get it. I'm right there with you. Yeah.
Batman is now Batman 89, and Superman is now Superman 78.
78.
Yeah.
78.
Yeah.
Yep. What is the holy grail of comic book artifacts? A Batarang, the Matrix of Leadership, Kryptonite, Green Lantern Ring, etc.
The holiest artifact? Action Comics #1? Has to be fictional, huh?
Uh-huh.
Key to Superman's Fortress of Solitude. There we go. That giant Bronze Age yellow key. It was as big as a house.
Yeah, it is. We are now exiting the comic fantasy funland. If you could create any comic storyline, what would you want to create, and what characters would you want to create it with? So basically, DC gives you the keys to the kingdom and tells you, go nuts. What would you do?
So and this came out of one of our podcast episodes years ago, but I love the idea of doing a 1980s DC team. And whether it's Justice League or some other team, I don't really care. But in the way I did this, I thought back to the way they built Avengers. When they built Avengers in the 60s, they basically said, let's take characters from all of our different books and throw them together. We grabbed one from Journey to Mystery. We grabbed this, they grabbed them from all these different books and combined them. So I like the idea of pulling people from different books, even different teams, and pulling them together. So, and then I'm a role player by trade, of superhero role playing.
Mm-hmm.
So when you build a superhero role playing game, you always think in archetypes. Okay, I need a tank, right? Someone who can, a big bruiser. I need an acrobat, or someone with magic, someone who's got energy powers and tech and mental. So I kind of built this based on all this stuff, type archetypes. So I would like a pre-crisis 1980s superhero team, which I think would be fun. You put Blue Devil on there because I'm a sucker. Pre-crisis Supergirl, because she always deserved to be on a team. Jon Stewart would be fantastic. There's your kind of energy construct guy. Supergirl's like your tank. Blue Devil's your acrobat. You get Firehawk. She's got the energy powers. You get Zatanna, who's got the magic. And then you pull people from other teams. This is where my idea from the Avengers kind of thing. You pull someone from the Metal Men, maybe Mercury, because he's a bit of a jerk. From the Challengers, the Unknown, you pull one of the whatever the smart guy is. I can't remember his name. From the Teen Titans, you get Lilith, because she's got mental powers. From the JSA, you get Wildcat, because he's a fighter, and that's the team I'd put together.
I swear, I don't care how many times people say the name. Every time I hear the name Lilith, all as I can think of is Frasier.
Well, Lilith in the comics is a hot redhead, so that's why I go that way.
There you go. What is the one piece of advice you would give the comics fandom?
It would actually be the slogan of our network. Over at the Fire and Water Podcast Network, we have a slogan. It is 3 simple words, is find your joy. Because we're all in this because we love comics. And so many people are bitter. And they just... And everyone's got stuff they don't like, right? We all do. But why focus on it? Why focus your energy on stuff you don't like, and it just makes you miserable? Instead, find your joy, find something that makes you happy, and just stick with that. And that's why I gave up comics at different points in my life, because I wasn't enjoying them. So I just found stuff I liked. I didn't have to walk away from comics. I just found comics I enjoyed reading. Yep. So let go of the negativity. I'm not saying it's not there. I'm not saying everyone has stuff they don't like. Just hang on to the joy and focus on that.
Yep. Be positive, folks. Absolutely.
Find your joy. We've even got T-shirts that say it.
That's right. All right, folks. We're going to go to a quick ad break. You're going to hear some ads and some other stuff. We're going to come back to get Shagg's all of his promotional stuff and everything else. Close the show right after this.
Hello, geeks and geekettes! Looking for a podcast that covers a vast array of topics? Then check out Altered Geek Unleashed, where we discuss our thoughts on this week's geeky news, tech, gaming, television shows, movies, cartoons, comics, and more. So, get altered, get geeky with the Altered Geeks. Every Friday on the Geekcast Radio Network.
Kid? Yes? Shut up.
Beyond the Night is the GCRN's latest review podcast. We are covering everything in the Knight Rider television universe, from the classic 80s TV series to the 1991 reunion film, Team Knight Rider, and the 2008 relaunch series as well. So join TFG and Mike and Dion the Music Man as they go in-depth and Beyond the Night only on Geekcast Radio Network. You can find Beyond the Night in iTunes and on www.geekcastradio.com.
Kid? Yes, Michael. Just keep driving.
Hi everyone, I'm here to tell you about the DC Comics News Podcast. Here every week to talk everything DC. Movies, TV, comics, and everything in between. But don't just take my word for it. Here are a couple of our sponsors. Listen to the DC Comics News Podcast. It's audio justice. No. It's audio chaos. These wackos are crazier than I am. Well, maybe you're both right. Regardless, you can catch us on every kind of podcast platform. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and everywhere you find great podcasts. So, can I go now? Let him go. He did everything you asked. No.
Hey, welcome to the Last Comic Shop Podcast, a comic book podcast that actually talks about comics.
Yep, each week we open the shop up and read and discuss a comic.
Sometimes we pair that up with comic book movies or TV shows.
Or not. Lots of times it's just comic books and sound effects.
Oh, yes, definitely lots of sound effects. So tune in on all the major podcasting platforms to the Last Comic Shop Podcast, or check out our library of evergreen shows at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com.
Imagine a podcast that celebrates the things we love. Why spend time being so angry and cynical about our fandoms? Join me, the Irredeemable Shagg, for a show where we're just trying to be happy. The Once Upon a Geek Podcast. Our discussions focus on a variety of geeky subjects that we're passionate about. While the topics will be ever-changing, our focus will be on science fiction, comic books, what it means to be a geek in this world, and other nostalgia-fueled ideas. Life is short. Focus on the positive. Find your joy. The Once Upon a Geek Podcast, part of the Fire and Water Podcast Network.
All right, folks, we are back here in the 545th episode of The Pull Bag, celebrating 11 years, coming up on March 6th of 2024. Mr. Shagg Matthews, thank you for taking the time to chat with me. Promote yourself. What do you got going on?
Well, you can find me over at the Fire and Water Podcast Network. I am producing shows such as the Justice League International HAHAHAHA podcast, which you may have heard mentioned just a little bit ago. Again, where we're covering the JLI era. We've been doing that show for 8 years, and it will wrap this August. Actually, we will have completed our mission and have covered all the JLI comics that Keith Giffen and JMD Mateus were involved with. Then one of my personal projects I do is called Once Upon a Geek. It's another podcast where I just do that Find Your Joy. That's every issue or every episode. It's a different topic, but it's something I enjoy. We might talk about Daredevil. Might talk about What If. We might talk about Doctor Who. We might talk about Justice League. Might be talking about Ted Lasso. Anything that we, me and my guest at that time, the guest is different every episode, that we enjoy, we're just going to have fun and talk about it. Or if you are a fan of the Justice Society, I have a show over there called JSA Presents. Once my JLI show ends, I'll be starting up monthly coverage on JSA Presents, talking all about the Justice Society, covering a lot of comics from the 90s and the 2000s for JSA. And then I'm on a lot of other shows, like the Who's Who podcast. We once in a blue moon will bust out the show that started it all, the Aquaman and Firestorm show. Digest Cast whenever we make those. A lot of other stuff I show, the FW Team Up. So a lot of places all over the Fire and Water Podcast Network. If you're on social media, you can find me as Once Upon a Geek or Once Upon a Geek Podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I have a suggestion/request. Have you done anything with Batman Beyond yet on Once Upon a Geek?
It's not my bag. It's not that I dislike it. I know. Hey, this would not be the moment for you to say, I have to do this.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I know.
I have nothing against Batman Beyond. It's just, I watched it when it came out, and I was like, oh, that's fun. It just wasn't. Again, I think it's the age difference, because Batman Beyond was, I think, what year did that start?
25 years ago, 99.
I was way out of college, getting married for the first time. I mean, I was an adult when that one started, very much an adult in my career. Whereas, you talk about stuff from the 80s and 90s, and I'm like, ooh, okay, that was, that gets the nostalgia juices flowing.
Well, it was in the late 90s, and they've had a million Batman Beyond comics because we've covered them all on this podcast.
That is true.
Oh, boy. All right. Thank you for joining us here inside the Pullbag. If you'd like to get in contact with us or leave feedback for the show, there are several ways to do so. Visit the website, geekcastradio.com, where you can listen to and comment on all of our content. Send us email to feedback@geekcastradio.com. You can check us out on any of the podcatching clients you choose to use. I prefer Spotify, but that's just me. Follow us on Twix, because I refuse to call it X. At Geekcast Radio for the network, at the Pullbag for the show. I am at TFG and Mike. Become a fan on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/Geekcast Radio Network. You can also check out the Pullbag over there, as well as you have a Once Upon a Geek page over there, don't you?
Yeah, there's a Once Upon a Geek page on Facebook as well.
And then there's a Fire and Water Podcast Network page too, I think.
Exactly right.
I think. All right, join us next time for something, since it doesn't say anything as to what the heck is happening in the next episode. I have no idea, and I'm not looking at the schedule right now, so it'll be a surprise for everybody. For now, I am TFG and Mike with
the Irredeemable Shagg.
As always, make your great escape into comics, and we will catch you next time.
I've never seen you laugh before. I don't think I like it. Cut it out. You're giving me the creeps.
You little fool.
You've just heard the latest episode of The Pullbag, the GCRN's first comic review and discussion podcast. There are several ways to get in touch with us and leave feedback for the show. You can visit the website, geekcastradio.com, where you can comment on the episode and all of our different podcasts. You can rate and leave a review for the show on iTunes. Be sure to leave us feedback. Become a fan of us on Facebook, facebook.com/thepullbag. Send us an email, feedback@geekcastradio.com. Follow us on Twitter @thepullbag and @geekcastradio. So until next time, make your great escape into comics and unleash the geek in you.
I'm not hearing this.